1941. Europe is ravaged by war. The fascist powers of Nazi Germany and Italy tear through Europe, conquering all who oppose them. The Red Army is in full retreat back through Russia. France has fallen. The hopes of free Europe rest on a small rock in the North Atlantic, Great Britain, and its newly elected Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was born November 30th, 1874, to his father Lord Randolph Churchill, a British statesman, and his mother, Jeanette Jenny, as she was known, Jerome. As a young child, Churchill grew up in Dublin, Ireland, where his father was employed by his grandfather, John Spencer Churchill, who was the 7th Duke of Marlborough. By all accounts, he was a rebellious child, and in April 1888 he was sent to the Harrow School, a boarding school near London. Shortly after his enrollment, he joined the Harrow Rifle Corps, which put him on a path to a military career. It took Winston 3 tries to pass the exam for the British Royal Military College. However, once there, he did well and graduated 20th in his class of 130. After graduating, he joined the 4th Hussars in 1895 and served in the Indian Northwest Frontier and the Sudan, where he saw action at the Battle of Omdurman in 1898. Whilst in the army, he wrote military reports for newspapers, the Pioneer and the Daily Telegraph. He soon found that he much preferred reporting the war rather than fighting it. In 1899, Churchill left the army and worked as a war correspondent for the Morning Post while reporting on the Boer War in South Africa. He was taken prisoner by the Boers while on a scouting expedition, and he made headlines when he escaped and traveled almost 300 miles through enemy territory to the safety of the Portuguese territory. In 1900, Churchill became a member of Parliament in the Conservative Party. Unconvinced, however, that the Conservative Party was committed to social justice, Churchill switched to the Liberal Party in 1904. Things started to turn up for Winston when he was elected a Member of Parliament in 1908 and was appointed to the Prime Minister's cabinet as the President of the Board of Trade. Winston was made First Lord of the Admiralty in October 1911, and while serving as First Lord of the Admiralty, Churchill helped modernize the British Navy. Though not directly involved with the disastrous Battle of Gallipoli, in which 21,000 British and Irish troops died and over 50,000 were injured, Churchill resigned his post in May of 1915 because he felt responsible for proposing the expedition, and for a brief period he rejoined the British Army, commanding a battalion of the Royal Scots Fusiliers on the Western Front and seeing action in No Man's Land. In 1917 he was appointed Minister of Munitions for the final year of the war, overseeing the production of tanks, planes, and munitions. From 1919 to 1922, Churchill served as Minister of War and Air and Colonial Secretary under Prime Minister David Lloyd George. Fractures in the Liberal Party, however, led to the defeat of Churchill as a Member of Parliament in 1922, and he rejoined the Conservative Party. He served as Chancellor of the Exchequer, returning Britain to a gold standard, where he took a hardline stand on labour strikes that were threatening to cripple the economy. In 1929, the Conservative government was voted out, and so was Churchill. He was seen as a right-wing extremist who was out of touch with the people. He spent the next few years writing and publishing his book, A History of the English-Speaking Peoples. 1938. Neville Chamberlain gets a vote of no confidence from Parliament, and King George VII names Winston Churchill as Prime Minister and Minister of Defence. This is the situation that Churchill faced as he took command. One island against an empire. On June 18th, he gave this speech to the House of Commons.
What General Weygand has called the Battle of France is over. The Battle of Britain is about to begin. Upon this battle depends the survival of Christian civilization. Upon it depends our own British life and the long continuity of our institutions and our empire. The whole fury and might of the enemy must very soon be turned on us. Hitler knows that he will have to break us in this island or lose the war. If we can stand up to him, all Europe may be freed, and the life of the world may move forward into broad, sunlit uplands. But if we fail, then the whole world, including the United States, including all that we have known and cared for, will sink into the abyss of a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted science. Let us therefore brace ourselves to our duty, and so bear ourselves that if the British Empire and its commonwealths last for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
1941. The US finally joins the war, and Churchill has the support he needs to take the fight to Fortress Europe. The tide finally begins to turn for the Allies, thanks in large part to Churchill's forming of an alliance between the US, Great Britain, and the Soviet Union. Churchill helped craft the post-war world with the United Nations at its centerpiece. As war wound down, Churchill proposed plans for social reform, but was unable to convince the public, and he was defeated in the general election of July 1945. Over the next 6 years, Churchill became a leader of the opposition party until his return to government in October 1951, when he was appointed Minister of Defense and Prime Minister. In 1953, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. Churchill had dealt with health issues since 1941, and in 1953 he suffered a series of strokes while in office. While this information was kept from the public, it soon became apparent to Winston himself that he had no longer had the strength to remain Prime Minister. He retired his post in 1955, but remained in Parliament until 1964. On January 15, 1965, Churchill suffered a severe stroke, and he died 9 days later at his London home at the age of 90 on January 24, 1965.